Hey, hey. Oh, you're muted. I think I got you.
I said Thursday. We're here, baby.
Yep. Breaking out the black shirt this time.
Yeah, I've gotten some complaints that I was being a little too formal, so I just went with the basic sweater here. But, you know, the thing is, men really need to dress better. Camille Paglia, I think, said this many years ago. One of the few things she said that I think is right. Men dress like boys now. You know, t-shirts and shorts. I mean, it's unbecoming, but it's just unattractive. It's part of the crisis of masculinity in American culture. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's maybe all we should be talking about since we are men, or at least designated as men. But yeah, I really don't like it, and people might think this is contradictory for someone who wrote A Renegade History of the United States, a celebration of the slackers and the drunks, etc. But no, I like people putting some effort into their appearance, and I also like it. Here's the thing: I really like. I like it when people put effort into their appearance, not in a way that makes themselves look more ugly, right? So that's what you see in big cities, you know, sort of among the liberal intelligentsia, like where I live. People make themselves look ugly deliberately. They go out of their way, right? Am I right? I mean, I just saw a woman yesterday who was like very nicely dressed and attractive otherwise, but she was working in a store, cashier in a store. She had her eyebrows bleached, and I don't understand. I don't. And then the blue hair, the pink hair, the green hair, the goth look. I'm sorry, no offense to you goths out there. I mean, sometimes goth can be attractive, but often it makes people look like machinery or something. Mm-hmm. It's like anti-sexual.
No, I agree with you, but I'm gonna back up my ladies on this one a little bit, or at least.
Did you say your ladies?
Yeah.
Your okay.
Exactly. You know, I gotta speak up for my queens out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what that phenomenon is psychologically they feel threatened by the male gaze. Ooh. And they want to take the power away from the male gaze by making themselves less desirable in that view.
I guess so, but I often seen grown ass women doing that, but I guess that could still apply to them. A lot of grown ass women could be afraid of the male gaze and just not want to be in the game. Mm-hmm. Right? Is my feeling. Is some women just don't want to be in the game. And by the way, you know, there's a crisis in masculinity, but there's also a crisis in femininity. And maybe that's even more profound because, as I've said a few times publicly lately, I've been getting reports from people I know who work at elite prep schools that basically there are no girls anymore. That almost every girl at sort of elite places like that, schools, identify as non-binary or as trans. And that seems to me to be what you're talking about. Girls choosing not to be in the game anymore of romance, relationships, sex, whatever, dating. You know, they don't, something happened that sort of made them feel like this is too difficult or something, or threatening. And so they're just not going to play the game. They're not going to be interested in men or boys, and they're not going to be girls or women. They're not going to be feminine. They're not going to be sexual. They're not going to be attractive. They're just going to be outside that whole world of sexual commerce.
Have you ever been on like the queer, like online spaces, like on Reddit or Tumblr, and ever looked at some of that culture?
No.
It's not sexual. It's like, it's companionship that they're looking for a lot of times. Like it's holding hands and like, I want somebody to rub my head to make me feel like cared for. It's a lot of that. And the sexual energy, the sexual charge of a relationship isn't what they're looking for a lot of time. Or, you know, they want partnership in some way and they want affection, but they don't want this energy attached to it.
So all you women out there, and I know there's lots watching right now, are you afraid of the male gaze? Is this true? Is Michael right about this? I want to know. I want answers right now. Who's afraid of the male gaze?
Who's afraid of the big bad man? Ryan Moore puts in the chat, if you've been exposed to porn, sex, and the matter Gen Z has, you'd probably be a little avoiding. There's that component that online porn is ubiquitous. Like they say that people are exposed to it at like the age of 10. Mm-hmm. So you're immediately desensitized and you just don't have a taste for being sexual in the real world.
Well, here's something I can report. This is to all you Zoomers out there. Real sex feels better than porn. Just putting that out there. Just consider it. Just consider it. Just from an old Gen Xer, just my suggestion. Give it a try, because it really does. It's actually better than porn. And then it's also good because you get like human connection, and you're not on your screen anymore. You're not looking in your phone anymore. You get some companionship, perhaps. There's like things that can do good things about relationships.
Dude, man. Yeah.
You're talking to me like you're looking at me like you fucking you geezer. What do you? What year are you from? You're saying.
No, it's twofold. Like the danger and the vulnerability is what terrifies everybody about it.
Sure.
But that's the only way that you can actually make a real connection with somebody is you make yourself vulnerable to somebody else,
This speaks to, is this right? I've never talked about generational politics so much, but I do think there's a real difference between your generation and my generation. It's part of, I think, the general timidity of your generation.
Yeah. Dude, I also think social media has something to do with it. Like, as soon as something happens with a relationship with anybody, somebody finds out about it, and then the reputational destruction kind of has like a permanent record no matter what. Yeah. Whereas you could hook up with somebody and there'd be no paper trail back in the day. That's right. Nowadays, the jockeying for status and how you appear all the time with your relationships is there for everybody to see, and it makes people a lot more protective about that.
Right. So would we call this parasex or parasexuality?
I would call a lot of practices of Gen Z parasexuality, yes.
Yeah, I've never heard that term, but I think that's what it is, isn't it?
We should write a book and make a lot of money on that. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, the parasexual generation or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's maybe I shouldn't be sad. This is what the Japanese have been doing for a while. They have outstanding porn. They're not having sex with each other, and their birth rates are declining. Their population is declining because of it, but that might be a good thing. Less crowded cities.
High suicide rate.
Well, there is that. There is that. No, I don't want to go the way of Japan. Mm-hmm. I want people to start fucking more, goddammit. I've been saying this for a long time.
Yeah. Same.
Good. Yeah. Well, I wasn't, since you're part of the Zoomer generation, I thought you might not be with that. I thought you might actually stand for the movement away from human contact.
I don't know how to do that without becoming Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you think Zoomers are ever going to start having sex with each other?
I think so. I think the only way out is through.
Through what?
By
doing it?
Yeah, by doing it.
I know. But what are we gonna? I think they're gonna have to ban porn. Maybe I'm now for banning porn. Maybe this is what's gonna turn me. I'm gonna become a conservative Christian Republican, and I'm gonna join Josh Hawley in calling for a ban on porn. And then but the thing is not for Josh Hawley's reasons. He did, by the way, call for a ban on porn about a year ago. No, it's the opposite. I want people to have more sex. It's a pro-sex, anti-porn campaign I'm launching now. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've defended porn many times. I'm still basically pro-porn. Although, I've heard more and more that people are choosing porn over sex, and I just find that sad. And I want to live in a world in which people are touching each other.
This is how the Christian conservatives criticize you and have a point. somebody who marries their high school sweetheart at 18 and has 7 kids with them has more regular sex than somebody who's floating around and occasionally hooking up and doesn't have a steady partner.
Oh, yeah.
More fulfilled lives. These people that you call Puritans actually, if the system works out the way it's supposed to, actually end up having more sex than these liberated people out wandering in nowhere land.
I don't care. I mean, I'm fine if people do it within a monogamous relationship. I just want them to do it. They're not having relationships either.
Yeah, they aren't.
Except online.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, we've got the framework of hookup culture from the 2010s without the sex. Like, that's all the relationships culture structured, but they're not. We're not actually hooking up.
The best of all possible worlds there. My goodness. Let's stop being sad. I don't know. Today I was just thinking, is everybody really depressed, or is it just me? It seems like there's a general depression, which I've never seen before at large in American culture, but it does seem that way to me. And I think this is part of it. Sex makes people happy.
Oh, sex makes people. Yeah. No, I think we're definitely depressed. I think I hate to be the libertarian whose brain was broken by COVID, but I think we just got out of the most repressive human experiment that's ever happened in the world. And people weren't allowed to even see each other's faces for 2 years. And we're completely touch starved, and we're completely face starved, and we're everybody's losing their money right now. So there's a ton of reasons to be depressed.
Okay, I'm gonna go. See you later. This has been fun. What's next, man? Let's go. Let's move forward. Let's do some news. Let's start talking politics, which always makes me happier.
Well, okay. This wasn't in the description, but I wanted to get to this. Are 15,000 prisoners in Iran about to be executed?
Oh. Well, okay. So there's a little fight on Twitter about this. So Newsweek reported that the parliament of Iran, voted to give the death sentence to the 15,000 protesters who have been arrested. Then someone a few days later said, Newsweek's full of shit. Actually, the Iranian parliament simply recommended that harsh measures be taken against the protesters, including and up to the death penalty. So because the parliament, like in most parliaments, they don't determine things like, sentences for for crimes. That's the judiciary in Iran. So, but the parliament overwhelmingly does want very bad things done to 15,000 protesters, including killing them.
Yeah, I still think that, okay, so there was an alarmist, just the tweets that came out and the way that this was disseminated was, there are 15,000 prisoners who are going to die in the next week, is how it was kind of portrayed. No. And they're going to be raped before they're killed because they believe that they should be denied heaven, so they can't be virgins.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am on record as being, behind, in support of the protests in Iran in general, but I am also in support of all of my friends who are saying it's a big CIA operation. I don't think it's just a big CIA operation, but I do think that's a big part of what's happening. And I think that Newsweek probably was fed that line by someone in some alphabet agency.
Well, Newsweek, if you read the Newsweek article, they don't go that far. I think the people who quote tweeted that article expanded that themselves and said that 15,000 people are going to be executed.
Oh, well, right. I mean, a lot of blue checks or former blue checks, who are, many of whom truly do get their information from the CIA. I mean, sometimes directly or sometimes indirectly through their favorite news outlets, who take their information from the CIA. By the way, I mean, it is amazing. The more I find out about this, about how major news outlets, like all the major news outlets, have been getting much of their information about foreign policy from the CIA since the 1960s or 50s. And the CIA has directly intervened in editorial decisions, telling newspapers and cable news networks exactly what to say about foreign relations. So, yeah, I mean, I think I think that's always happening. I think that many of the headlines are almost literally written by the intelligence agencies. And this is probably part of that. I think that, and so that people have been trained, like the blue checks, the liberal political class has been trained for generations to think like the CIA, right? To look at the world just like the CIA does, like the political establishment does, to see Iran the way that the CIA sees Iran. And so that's, I think, why they were amplifying that claim about what's going on in Iran, because they knew that would comport with what the man thinks, what their favorite people in Washington think.
Yeah. Iran truly has crazy beliefs and practices. Well, us Frugality shouldn't be using that word crazy. Yeah, I know.
No. Bad boy. Don't say that.
But okay, so like Margaret Atwood, who wrote.
You mean evil? You mean evil, not crazy.
Well, do we want to?
Kidding. That's even worse.
Yep. But The Handmaid's Tale, right? Margaret Atwood wrote that, and that's
right.
Like, that's the liberal pornographic fantasy about what Republicans want to do with them. But she wrote that book based off of actual policies that were in Iran, and in the same way that
Didn't know that.
The foreword to that book or something in there says that everything that I talk about in this book is happening somewhere in the world, and that somewhere in the world is 9 times out of 10 Iran.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's interesting. It's funny how she hasn't said that much in public.
Yeah. Ever since it got picked up for a TV show in the Trump era.
It's all about Trump, man. Yeah. That book is 100% about Trump, even though it was written decades before he ran for president.
Yeah. Or the Frank Zappa album, Joe's Garage, is a concept album about music being illegal. It was written in 1979, right after Iran made music illegal and made dancing illegal. Like Footloose. Iran is the cultural place that is way out of the realm of the Western world. Yeah. I
remember when Handmaid's Tale was playing on HBO or whatever it was, when it was the series, and every white liberal woman in the country was watching it, and I was around a lot of them at that time. Dated a couple of them, and it was just amazing to watch, like, this woman who had graduated from Harvard, who would go to work in her law firm in the morning and drove a BMW and had 6 figures in the bank and a 6-figure salary, really believing in her soul that she was living in The Handmaid's Tale. And I mean, it didn't comport with her reality one single bit, but they had millions of women believing that. And now I'm thinking, well, what do they think now? Do they think that they were in The Handmaid's Tale back then? Or no one ever. I mean, these myths, these liberal myths that get propagated. Someone needs to write a list of them, and let's see them all in one place. 1 out of 4 college women are getting raped. Black college students are getting murdered by the KKK. That was what was said in 2016, 2017. Michael Brown was innocent. It goes on and on and on. And they don't care. The hysteria comes, they all believe it for a minute, and then they forget about it and move on to the next hysteria. And they forget all about it. The things they said. And then there's this, the missiles in Poland just now. Classic example. And this is interesting because it's very quick how fast it happened.
Yeah.
So what was it, Tuesday? Was it Tuesday?
I think so, yeah.
Tuesday. Everybody was saying, of course, Russia sent missiles into Poland because that's what Russia does. Zelensky that afternoon issued this video saying, of course, Russia did it. That's why we need NATO to act now. And then the very next day, NATO itself and the EU both said, no, actually, that was a Ukrainian missile that accidentally fell in Poland. Mm-hmm. Is anyone taking any accountability for this? Is there nothing, no apologies, no retractions, no saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't, maybe NATO shouldn't go to war because of this thing? Maybe Zelensky was wrong? No, nothing. I don't, whatever. It's the ongoing frustration with the liberal class. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I forget which American official said this, but like, no matter what happens, Russia is responsible, is what they were saying.
Right. Well, yeah.
We haven't done the investigation yet, but Russia is ultimately responsible because the whole conflict happened, and so
No, that's the current. Actually, that's the current official line of NATO and the EU and the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, well, yes, I mean, Ukraine certainly has a right to self-defense, but it doesn't have a right to shoot missiles into Poland.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Where's the call to, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, right?
That too.
Poland isn't a member of NATO. You want to invoke Article 5? Maybe invoke it against Ukraine right now.
Well, right. That's the other joke. Yeah, exactly. We need to invade Ukraine. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. Exactly. Yeah, Poland's not going to do that because Poland is down with the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Poland is completely the puppet of the United States.
Yeah. But the reason why I brought up Iran is that just like we are, I think, on the side of the protesters in Iran. Like we genuinely feel for them and want the best for them.
Who,
right?
you and me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you see these outlandish stories and you see sensationalist media like put out basically wartime propaganda that 15,000 people are about to be murdered and raped tomorrow is how it's presented to you. Like it does these people no good, I think. Like it totally discredits people who are on their side.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we need to be careful in what we say and cautious and realistic. Otherwise, we get discredited. And as someone who has been a part of fringe radical political movements my entire life, I can tell you that is crucial to put forward always a sober, respectable face and not just fly off the handle with wild allegations that are unproven. Because again, we have so little credibility to begin with. When you're radical, you start with zero credibility. People assume you're a crank. And so you have to be smarter than everyone else. You have to be more diligent and rigorous than everyone else. Otherwise, you have no chance of making any intervention in the discourse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this, like, just that story, it echoes the whole Belgians are being raped with bayonets, Belgian from World War I. It echoes babies in incubators. It just echoes every story that's been used to lie us in the war.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the anti-war movement has to be always on point with this stuff. Got to be very careful. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the anti-war movement, I'm starting to kind of drift away from the anti-war movement a bit ideologically. I'm kind of spending more of my time listening to and talking to realists, foreign policy realists like the Duran guys and Doug McGregor, Scott Ritter. They're different. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the ideological difference is, but they're not idealistic. They're not moralistic either. They just want to figure out who's doing what is causing the most trouble and the most war and the most violence, and how do we eliminate that, or how do we stop that from happening? Very hard-headed, cold-blooded, rational approach to foreign policy that I really appreciate. And the anti-war movement, for me, has usually been right, almost always been right, but their moralism gets in the way. Their moralism causes them to not see certain things, not acknowledge certain facts, or look for facts that aren't maybe there. So it's morality. That's the problem.
Well, it's morality, but it's also like we've talked about this a lot in our classes, in that we've always loved the hard left for being good on foreign policy, but the more you look into them, they don't actually care about being anti-war. They just hate the American empire. They hate capitalism, and they're just on a certain side.
Right. They happen to be on the side that's against the superpower. Mm-hmm. And so they're against all the wars pretty much in the world, because most of the wars have something to do with the superpower. Right.
Yeah. James Gentleman in the chat. You can be anti-war while also realizing that the realists are the school most likely to get us there.
Oh, I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the idealist school, which starts with Woodrow Wilson. It's called the idealist school, which is that.
Well, he's saying that the realists are the people who are most likely to get us an anti-war result.
Oh, sorry, to get a good result. Yes, my bad. Yeah. The ones who start wars are idealists.
Yes.
They're the ones who start with very moralistic premises, like America should save the world, for instance, which is what Woodrow Wilson said, quite literally. And next thing you know, tanks are rolling into other countries to save the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's crazy for these people who have grand ideas about like international law and an international order. As soon as you suggest to these people, hey, what if the United States plays by the same rules as everybody else, or what if we see this conflict from Russia's perspective? They shut you down immediately.
Mm. Well, it's all about who sets the rules, which rules, which laws, right? And it's interesting. The rules in the post-war order have been largely unwritten. They're rules that have been established by practice by the United States and by precedent at times. But it's interesting that Russia and China and BRICS generally, the opposition to this, they're calling for a law-based order, world order, and they want things written down and agreed upon. You know, they want it to be contractual. They want to really be clear about who can do what and when and where. And I think that's a very good move.
Yeah.
I would like to see that.
Mm-hmm. All right. The big story is the FTX crypto exchange going down. And this is just a massive, massive, massive story. I've been like researching it for the past, I guess, week. And just watching it happen in real time.
Yeah.
And it just stretches everywhere.
Yeah.
What was your angle on it?
Well, I mean, it doesn't stretch everywhere. It stretches into all the nooks and crannies and crevices of what you might call the cathedral. Mm-hmm. The Democratic Party, liberal, political, and cultural establishment. So what I find fascinating about the FTX story is not so much the nuts and bolts of exactly how he stole the money and all that, although that's, of course, important and interesting, but it's that it gives us a tremendous window into the world of power. Who holds power and how do they wield it? Who's important in this world? And so think about the institutions and the individuals involved in this. So start with Sam Bankman-Fried's parents, which is where it starts. They gave birth to the fucker. They're both Stanford law professors. Stanford, by the way, is now definitely the fount of all evil in the world. It used to be Columbia University, my alma mater. When I was giving lectures on U.S. history, it was amazing how often I would refer to some war criminal as being a product of Columbia University. But nowadays it's Stanford. I mean, just take a look. I mean, they have like this whole misinformation. They have several misinformation institutes at Stanford, which are basically censorship bureaus giving advice to politicians about who to censor and when. But anyway, so, and then of course, Democratic Party establishment is all up in Stanford. Silicon Valley, of course, is there. And his mother, Barbara Fried, was, until she just stepped down, I think this week, the head of the huge Democratic Party super PAC called Mind the Gap. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I believe she teaches regulatory law also. And I think, or his father does. Anyway, they're both Stanford law professors. Okay. So that's pretty good, pretty establishment, and major Democratic Party operatives, fundraisers. Then you have hundreds of millions of dollars invested by FTX and by Alameda Research, Hollywood people like this fascinating guy named Michael Kivas. There was a really fascinating Twitter thread about him. He got $300 million to fund some startup of his. He was, I think still is, a major Hollywood agent, basically. Used to work for ICM, one of the big agencies in Hollywood.
Well, real quick, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars in this scam. And this is just $300 million out of all that being allocated to this Hollywood guy. So,
right. So, I mean, this is just one example, but it's, 300 million is still pretty serious.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But the point is that he brought all these cultural connections for FTX. So he knows the entire Hollywood elite, of course, and the Clintons, super tight with the Clintons, this guy Kivas. And I think that's how the Clintons got to SBF, through this Kivas Hollywood guy. And, and then, speaking of Columbia, his aunt is at Columbia also. And she's also a big Democratic fundraiser.
Yeah. Well, that Kivas guy, that tweet thread pointed out that, like, there's no pictures of this guy with celebrities. There's like,
right.
This guy just has like a LinkedIn page or something. Like there's a lot of like untraceable people that are connected to this thing, like high profile yet untraceable people, like billionaires without email addresses, like the person who started it with Bankman-Fried, Gary Wang. Like nobody knows who that guy is.
Right. Yeah, but it's just interesting to see like who are the players, who are the institutions attached to this thing. And by the way, Kivas's wife is a former ACLU lawyer. Now, you know, I used to support the ACLU when they were actually for the First Amendment. But again, it just shows you like the liberal establishment, what it really means, who holds power, who do you need to know to run the world? And that's what we're finding out.
This is what George Carlin would say, is that you don't need a formal conspiracy. These people just come from the same institutions, the same universities. They just happen to have the same interests, and they don't need to be told what to do. They just go in line.
Same culture.
Yeah, same culture, yeah.
Same language, same values, same assumptions about the world. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same religion, you could say.
Yep. Yeah, so the liberal establishment needed this Sam Bankman-Fried guy to talk about crypto in their language to get them on board with it.
Yeah. Okay. So that part, you know, I'm not exactly clear on, but I was going to say the other piece of it is Ukraine, which is utterly amazing, or maybe not amazing, that it turns out that SBF, FTX were funding the shit out of the Ukrainian government. And now there is an allegation, which has not been proven at all, but we should mention it. Some people are saying that this was a massive money laundering operation for the Democratic Party, in which, and I'm not saying this is true.
Yeah, not proven. Yeah.
We do know that FTX did set up exchanges for the Ukraine government and basically funneled a bunch of cryptocurrency to the Ukraine government. We know that, but it is being claimed by some that the Ukraine government then gave that money back to FTX, who in turn gave it to Democratic Party candidates, which would make sense. It's just that we don't have the evidence for that, because of course the Ukraine government needs the Democrats to win, because the Democrats, of course, are funding Ukraine. So it's this phenomenal circuit of funding.
Yeah. And SBF was the second largest donor to the Democrats.
After George Soros.
Yep.
Although I was just hearing someone say that he's probably the first. He's probably the biggest donor, because there's so much we don't know, and so much that's untraceable because it's crypto.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the point. One of the points of crypto, right? And we don't even know how much was given to Ukraine. We don't know how much has been given to Democratic candidates exactly. And we're going to find out more. But I'll bet you it's more. I'll bet you he's the #1 donor.
Probably,
when it's said and done.
That was the big story about the midterms, is how much the Democrats outspent the Republicans.
Everywhere. My God.
Yeah.
In Arizona, Mark Kelly spent $70+ million, $70 million on a Senate campaign, and Blake Masters spent $9 million. And that's incredible, because Blake Masters, I thought, you know, was very prominent, he had a lot of juice, national campaign. He got Peter Thiel money. I thought he was getting a lot of money, but then it turns out, no, he was dwarfed in spending by the Democrats. And I think that was true across the country. I don't know about Fetterman. Do you know about the funding on the Fetterman campaign?
No, I just heard, I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but same story, I'm pretty sure.
What a great investment that was, though.
Yeah, I mean, it paid off.
He is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. I just cannot wait for his speeches in the Senate.
Yeah. See, I felt bad after last week, because like if somebody didn't know Fetterman, and if somebody hadn't seen any videos of him talking, they think that we're just super mean. But this dude is literally recovering from a stroke. It's worse than what we make it sound like.
Well, I wouldn't say a damn thing about him if he weren't running for Senate.
Yeah,
trying to have massive power over me, right? That's what a senator is. It's a person who has power over me. And that's what people need to remember. You know, those are not normal human beings who play by the rules. I mean, these are people who want to control you, who want to have power over you. No. And I didn't vote for him. I would never vote for him. I didn't vote for anybody. So he is utterly, in my view, illegitimate, not my leader. He is the enemy, and I don't care. All the rules of civility go out the door for me when it comes to government officials.
Yeah. Yeah, you're punching up when you're talking about government officials.
The only people I will make fun of their appearance, their speaking ability, their clothes. The only people I will direct ad hominem attacks toward is government officials. Everyone else is exempt from that.
Yeah, but even then, I just feel bad for them. Like Joe Biden should be with his family, who loves him, and he has a crackhead son who's 50, who can't take care of him. It's sad. And his good son died in the war that he sent him off to. It's horrible.
Yeah, but why does he keep running for president? I mean, if he didn't do that, I would be sympathetic. I can't be. I just can't. I mean, he's a murderer and an incarcerator. I mean, he's put people in cages and he's killed people, and including his son. I mean, and he wants to do more, and he currently has power over me in a totally illegitimate way. And I'm not talking about the election being stolen. I'm saying he has power over me and all my friends, and none of us voted for him. No, I don't have any sympathy for the guy. Zero. Hunter, I do. I have a little bit of sympathy for Hunter.
Yeah. No, it's a Shakespearean tragedy, though, just his whole life.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Oh, it's definitely Shakespearean. Yeah. And by the way, the Republicans are already firing on this stuff. I mean, did you see Josh Hawley interrogating Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI? I think it was today.
Rand Paul. Did Josh Hawley get him too?
It was today, I think, or yesterday. I think it was today.
It was Josh today. I saw Rand Paul. I didn't see Josh Hawley.
Oh man, he reamed Chris Wray. It was amazing. And I mean, imagine that, like conservative Republicans going hard against the FBI. Things have changed, and the resistance, the rebellious people in our society, they're for the FBI. The rebels, the ones who are standing up to power and oppression, they're for the FBI. They're supporting the FBI. The Republicans are trying to take the FBI down, and I love it.
Yeah, nothing makes sense anymore, which is why I love it. And I think in terms of free speech, the world makes so little sense that I think free speech is coming back, in that the rules are so hard to keep track of that I think you can literally say anything.
What do you mean? Where?
Well, like you can make a left-wing critique of the Democratic Party pretty much at every step of the way. Like the socialist critique that the Democratic Party is a fascistic center-right party is pretty darn true. They are corporatists. They work with the corporations to block out competition. That's what the FTX story is really about. This is the guy who went to Congress and said, "Hey, I want regulation. We should be regulated." Right. And if you look at his practices, every step of the way, he's stamping out all of his competition and making money hand over fist on them.
Yeah, that is the story. That's the big scam, is that it's almost like the whole thing was a setup. I mean, I doubt it was, but almost like it was a setup to regulate crypto, right? He comes flying in and doing all these huge things and very publicly, spectacularly collapses, and thereby proves that we need to regulate crypto.
You know what Hotep Jesus called it?
What?
The digital Reichstag fire.
Yeah, that's nice. That sounds right to me. That sounds right to me. If he didn't intend it, that's the purpose it serves.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah. Mr. Crypto calling for regulation of his own industry goes up in flames, thereby proving that we need to regulate his industry.
Yeah.
And thereby fucking all the rest of us. And thereby, most importantly, helping the government fend off its greatest competitor and adversary, which is cryptocurrency.
Yeah. And FTX is set up in the Bahamas. It's an offshore company this whole time. So the SEC can't necessarily go after them in some respects.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you look into the guy? I just heard someone mention this. I have no idea if it's true at all, but there's a rumor out there that somebody involved with FTX drowned in the ocean in Puerto Rico, like recently, right after he said something about FTX.
There's a potential whistleblower who drowned around Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the story. I haven't looked super deep into it, but I've heard that rumor as well.
Yeah. Any legs to that?
Oh, I mean, it was said by BitBoy Crypto, who's been great on this stuff. Ben from BitBoy Crypto, and I trust him. And this is the thing, the crypto community has actually been good on this stuff. If you really, really pay attention to crypto, Crypto Windy, BitBoy Crypto, a lot of people were saying, get your money off of FTX. People who actually understand crypto have been saying, get your money off of exchanges, period. But they've been ringing alarms about FTX as well.
I mean, if they killed somebody, that would be something else. Is that man?
That's not, we're talking about billionaires here in the Caribbean. Like,
yeah,
that's not hard to do.
Oh, to kill a billionaire?
No, for a billionaire to kill somebody.
Oh, to kill, yeah. I mean, there have been a lot of shady deaths lately in the last several years. You know, a lot of well-connected people have died unexpectedly, some by the vaccine, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, that's always been a bridge too far for me in the conspiracy theorizing. However, this is the first time in my life where I actually give it a second thought. I think about it. I think of whether that's possible. The CIA has done crazier things.
Yeah, well, not even the CIA. I mean, Bankman could have done it
himself. Well, yeah, sure, right.
Yeah,
right. Well, yeah, but his friends. I mean, his friends were so powerful that they had a lot at stake here. You know, I mean, it's very much like Epstein. It's very much like the Epstein story.
Yeah. Like John McAfee. Like, I think John McAfee is guilty of what people said John McAfee did. I think Murder? He killed somebody. I think he hired somebody to kill him. But like, he was just so like transparent about it and so ruthless about it, you know. But I don't think that's hard to pull off if you have billions of dollars and you're in the Caribbean.
Yeah, especially in the third world. Yeah. Right. Hiring someone to kill someone, it shouldn't be that hard if you have a bunch of money, I would think. Right.
Did you hear about Sam's philosophy of effective altruism? Have you heard about that before?
Yeah, I had a couple meetings with some people here a couple of years ago who were all in this. It was like this big fad starting about 2018 or 19, based in Silicon Valley. I think it's Peter Singer is this Australian philosopher, right? It's his idea. And it's about like doing the maximum good or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
The way I've heard it was explained by Tim Ferriss, who I do like.
Okay.
But he's saying basically Mother Teresa, right? How much good has she done in the world? She started a homeless shelter in the third world that was actually pretty brutal to live in, and didn't necessarily materially raise the conditions of those people that much.
No.
But we see her as a saint, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about somebody like Bill Gates or a billionaire? Now, you can find Bill Gates's philanthropic ventures to be absolutely crazy and insane and detrimental as well. But like hypothetically, a billionaire who is selfish at first, makes billions and billions of dollars, and then has the means to give back to the world by picking charities and giving billions of dollars to them, will do more good for the world than a Mother Teresa who just starts out wanting to be good.
Oh, because Bill Gates is rich and has a lot of money to give away, and Mother Teresa does not.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes back to the 19th century and the robber barons and philanthropy, the origins of philanthropy in the 19th century. And Andrew Carnegie, The Gospel of Wealth, gave this very famous speech in the 1890s or 80s called the Gospel of Wealth, in which he says this. He says, it is our duty as rich people to help our brethren, to lift them up. Right? It's very much like it's progressivism. It's progressive imperialism for the wealthy. That's what effective altruism is.
Yeah. And did you see Jeff Bezos is going to be giving away his whole fortune in the same manner?
To what was it? To fight climate change. And the other one was to advance social unity.
Yeah.
Unity, I think is what the word was. That you gotta grab for your pistol as soon as you hear that term. Social unity. I don't want to unify. Thank you very much. I'm good right here with me and my friends. I'm not interested in unifying with you, Jeff Bezos. I mean, that's the implication, is that he wants us to be unified with him. And aren't we enough unified with Jeff Bezos already? I mean, seems like half our lives are go through Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. But that's like the whole ESG and the whole World Economic Forum, the whole public-private partnership pretty much hinges on that philosophy of effective altruism, in that it provides the philosophy that says you're a good person for being selfish and getting as rich as possible.
Right.
But you're also beholden to the greater good. So you have to give to the causes that we deem essential for you to justify the wealth that you got.
Right. Right. I'm just thinking about all the noise that will be produced by Jeff Bezos, his money going to climate change and social unity, all the stuff we're going to hear and see on Twitter and memes and documentaries and who knows. I mean, newspapers telling us things that I hate these people.
Well, yeah. The greatest philosopher of our time, Andrew Tate, had something to say about Sam Bankman-Fried. So
he's smart. I like him.
Yeah, this is what he had to say about him.
I've lived a very long life. I've met a lot of people. I've been broke. I've been rich. I've done it all. And 100% of the time, when I meet a person who has lots of money and is very, very frugal with their lifestyle, they are not a good person. 100% of the time. I have a Bugatti. I'm sitting here. I've got a diamond Patek. I've got fucking $6 million of watches, $15 million of cars, blah, blah. I give money away. I'm philanthropic. Fine. When I know people with lots of money and they sit there and they want to drive an old Toyota Corolla, or they're very frugal, they talk about investing, and they save money, these people are always fucking weirdos. Money has no value past a certain number. And if you're going to sit there and hoard it past a certain number, there's actually a degree of greed inside of you. I'm not the greedy one. Me with my Bugatti and my diamond watches and my hundreds of millions of dollars buying everything, buying penthouses in Dubai, I'm not greedy. I'll give my money away. It's the people who hoard and live these very fucking boring, frugal lifestyles that are truly greedy. And they're truly evil. FTX is a perfect example. If this motherfucker was driving a nice fat Lambo and he had a big diamond watch and was living a life which a millionaire should live, I would have trusted him a bunch more. But when he sat there and said, I only drive a Corolla and I give all my money away and I just try and hoard it all to just help people, an alarm went off in my head, because everybody I know who is like this 100% of the time in my human experience ends up being full of shit. Full of shit. What he is a fucking dork who wanted to be powerful and influential. He realized that money won't stop him being a nerd because the girl he's hanging around with is still getting plowed by his fucking blockchain dev. So he wanted to have power, and when you want power, you need unlimited money, so he became infinitely greedy, trying to get as much money as possible to buy political parties, pretend he's doing charitable acts, just to have influence and control over other people, then stands up and goes, I drive an old car and I have a cheap t-shirt. And you know what? You dumb fucks believed him. You sat there and go, oh yeah, he's a good person. He won't famoose me for all my money. He doesn't care about money. People like him care about money more than people like me, because people like me spend our money. So next time you meet a guy who's rich but tight as fuck, be careful.
Yes. So this is a long story. So, which I've talked about and written about. Andrew Carnegie, who I mentioned, gave away basically all of his money to philanthropy. That's why there are libraries and universities all over the country with Carnegie on them, with the name Carnegie. John D. Rockefeller, the wealthiest man in the history of the world at the time, made his children wear hand-me-downs. He never went to any parties. He worked all the time. His official portrait, he has this incredibly grim face. It's like famous how angry and unhappy he looks. The robber barons of the turn of the 20th century largely did this. They gave away much of their money and they didn't live well at all. They didn't spend money on themselves. And Max Weber, the German social scientist at the time, wrote a very famous essay about this. And he said it's because they believed, these robber baron capitalists, they believed that they were the fathers of the world. And they were put on this earth to take care of the rest of us. And so they're here on a godly mission, which is to uplift the human race. They're profoundly puritanical in that way, in the original Christian meaning of that term. And therefore, they are capitalist imperialists. They want to, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett still lives in a ranch house in Omaha, Nebraska. Bill Gates, both those guys, they look like accountants. They wear like cheap sweaters or whatever. You would never know that they have any money at all by looking at them. They don't spend money on themselves in that way, not in any ostentatious way, the way that Andrew Tate does. Same thing. What do Warren Buffett and Bill Gates spend all their time doing? They work day and night trying to save the world. They're going to go fix Africa. They're going to fix democracy in the United States. They're going to cure AIDS. They're going to cure COVID, on and on and on. They know Bill Gates is very sure how we should live. He really is very clear about how we all should live. And he's using his money. He's spending all of his money to make sure that happens. And now Jeff Bezos. Now it's Jeff Bezos' turn, who, by the way, hasn't been so puritanical. He has spent quite a bit of money on himself, but now that's changing. I think he got the memo from Andrew Carnegie. He's read the Gospel of Wealth sermon, and he's seen what his buddies Bill and Warren do. So he's thrown away all of his money too, so that he can be godly as well. Guilt is a motherfucker, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also a lot of it's kind of jockeying for status too, like the Puritan thing. Like, if you flaunt your wealth, you're not a member of our club, and you're not a serious person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You have to have tremendous wealth. You have to have it, tremendous wealth, which gives you power and access and gives you good taste, allows you to have good taste, which is so important. But you're never allowed to spend it on yourself in an ostentatious way. Mm-hmm. That throws you out of the club. And that goes all the way back to the 19th century. Progressives who come straight out of Puritanism. It's all about that. It's a very Christian idea of self-abnegation, self-sacrifice, sacrificing your own desires and freedoms and pleasures to serve God's community, to serve other people, to serve the world, to serve the people rather than yourself. Mm-hmm. Classic Christian asceticism, which the Apostle Paul lays out very clearly in the Epistle to the Romans in the Bible.
Well, and also, if you flaunt your wealth, you're basically advertising that you're not seriously concerned with power. That
right.
There's a bigger game being played, and you don't care for that. And you don't see it.
That's right. That's right. Flaunting your wealth is considered to be childish. And what adults do is they are concerned about the community, not themselves. They spend their money on, again, the community, not themselves. Mm-hmm. But that means they're just imperialists and busybodies and do-gooders who want to change our lives according to their own dictates. They don't care what we want. They think that what we want is actually false and wrong. They're going to make sure that we do the right thing by buying a library, like Carnegie did. He established a whole bunch of libraries. So did Rockefeller, right? And making sure the right books are in that library, right, for us to read. Or he's going to open a museum, start a museum, which Carnegie did, and make sure the right things are on display in the museum to teach the masses. He says this in the Gospel of Wealth. Everyone should read that. Teach the masses correctly. Universities and schools, of course. How many schools and universities have Carnegie and Rockefeller in their names? Same thing. We're going to teach the people correctly what we think. It's arch imperialism. Mm-hmm. It's driven by the rich rather than governments, but it's the same thing. It's the same process, same mission.
Yeah. Oh, you can see it with Elon Musk too. Like every decision he makes, he has a moralistic reason as to why it's for the good of humanity and the good of the world.
Right.
That's why governments support him.
That's right.
Yeah. That's
right. Yeah. So Tate, he's a little bit off. I mean, they're not evil in the way he's saying, but he is right that they should not be trusted and they do not have our best intentions at heart. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's why I like people like the Bang Energy CEO or companies like Bang Energy, where they just make the most delicious energy drink and they have hot girls advertise it and 0 calories, creatine, it's got everything you'd want. And it's just a great product that's fun.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Capitalism should be about fun and pleasure and giving us what we want right now. But the Puritanism has remained powerful in American culture, and it even finds its way into the minds of the super rich, which is so ironic. But you could say that the super rich are the most puritanical among us.
Yeah. That's You've talked about wanting to do a deep dive into the psychology of people like Hillary Clinton, but a deep dive into these oligarchs and the repression that they live under and what their life is like would be really fascinating.
Mean, can you imagine like having $100 billion and working every day, all day long? Mm-hmm. I mean, I would immediately retire.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I would immediately retire and go to the beach. It's incredible. I mean, that is a particular mindset I can never understand or relate to. But Max Weber explains it.
Yeah.
Max Weber says these guys have always had in their minds this belief that they are our dad. They know best how we should live, what we should do, and they're going to make sure we're taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Man, and it does not take a lot of money to be happy. Like,
no.
It does not take a lot of money.
No.
Crazy.
No, I mean, an upper middle class American lifestyle is luxurious. Mm-hmm. Luxurious.
Yeah. Okay. You shared this video on Twitter. This is the crowds in Brazil, and I want to show it to people and just talk about what that represents as far as democracy. You know,
I don't know.
But yeah.
Oh, I'm speaking over this. Yeah, I mean, I just saw this the other day, and there's controversy about this video. Some people are saying it was taken from a protest, a pro-Bolsonaro protest just a few days ago, and then other people online said it's actually from September, and then other people on Twitter said it's from 2021 or 2020. I don't know. Who knows? But it's clearly pro-Bolsonaro because of all the Brazilian flags. I've noticed that in all the Bolsonaro rallies and protests, there's lots of Brazilian flags. Mm-hmm. Very nationalistic, makes sense. But what they're doing is protesting corruption in the election system there, and I don't even know half of it. I mean, I know only a little bit about what's gone on there, but apparently there's just been incredible amounts of corruption in the election and in the political system in general, which, by the way, has affected both sides. I mean, Lula went to prison, for God's sake, on trumped up charges that were pretty much clearly political in nature, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just Bolsonaro who's getting hit by this stuff, but it's a huge, I mean, just the size of these rallies, and that's not the only one. There have been many huge rallies, and I know there have been some this week, pro-Bolsonaro this week, that were huge in Sao Paulo and elsewhere. Gigantic, and it just looks to me like a system that is on the verge of collapse or revolution, or at least a major shakeup. And I'm talking about the Brazilian political system, mm-hmm. which is important for us because Brazil has become one of the most powerful countries in the world. And as I said in last week's show, they have been developing a relationship with China, which might be the deepest relationship that any Western state has with the CCP.
Yeah, I was more getting at like back in 2020, a lot of liberals, a lot of like intellectual dark web people who knew all the faults of Biden voted for Biden because they saw Trump as not willing to explicitly accept the results of the election no matter what. Mm-hmm. And that is a line that you absolutely cannot cross, because even if you are correct, casting doubt into the electoral process is one of the most dangerous things you can do to a civilization.
That's right.
Peaceful transfer of power is way more important than the actual election itself.
Right. Right. So everybody who's in the political class, everybody who holds office or aspires to hold office, or whose friends hold office, cannot allow elections to be denied. You can't call that system into question, because if you call that system into question, you're calling them into question. Their very existence, their power, and their status are all called into question if the electoral system is called into question. How do we know that you're legitimate, mayor or governor or senator or president? We no longer know that you're legitimate. In fact, we strongly suggest that you're illegitimate, because we know that these elections have been corrupted in various ways. So if you call into question an election on a national level, then everybody who holds office is suspect. So they cannot allow that. That's why they go to war almost literally. I mean, they've been literally locking people up and holding them in prison because of this thing, so-called election deniers, right? Because they can't allow it. It is an existential threat to them, not to us. That's why no one watched the J6 hearings, but it was vitally important, obviously, to Congress people. Congress people were super excited about the J6 hearings, but no one watched them. No one cared for this very reason, because they knew that their asses were on the line with this thing, but no one else cares.
Yeah. Here we are, like dissidents, and we don't care for any election, really. We don't, like, you're historically knowledgeable, so you know that, like, in the United States, there really haven't been transparent, fair, accountable elections ever, right? Like,
I mean, I don't know no one knows for sure, but we do. I mean, there's lots and lots of stories, I mean, we know that 1960, Mayor Daley, we talked about this in Chicago, actually, on the tour and the Unregistered Weekend in Chicago tour. Mayor Daley did a lot of shenanigans with the votes in Cook County and held the election results in Cook County until the last minute. And then suddenly it was pro-Kennedy. And many people strongly suspect that the Mayor Daley basically rigged the election for Kennedy and was responsible for John F. Kennedy being the president. 2000, of course, I mean, millions or maybe hundreds of thousands of people were marching in the streets protesting what they said was a rigged election. The Supreme Court rigged the election for Bush. And then 4 years later, the same thing. The entire left said, this is a phony election. It was corrupt. Bush is not a legitimate president. And then, of course, 2016, when they said for 3 solid years that the election was stolen by Russia and Trump. But now you can't say it.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans are saying we need to restore faith in elections by making them transparent and accountable, and every legal vote gets counted and everything gets taken care of on election night and verifiable, no loopholes. The Democrats are saying everybody needs to shut the fuck up and accept the results no matter what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I am, and my mind is boggled by what's going on in Arizona and other states too. It's not just Arizona, Pennsylvania too. I mean, but Arizona was counting for more than a week. How could this possibly be in the United States in 2022? How on earth could it take them a week to count the votes in one state? In almost every other country, you get the results that night. Like major industrial countries, they count the votes immediately, and people know who the prime minister or the president is that night, the night they cast their vote. They know who won. But I don't get it. I don't even know what's going on. And also in Nevada, all sorts of shenanigans. And I think there's going to be lawsuits, and we're going to find out a lot of stuff about what goes on in these states and what goes on in the Democratic parties in these states. I don't know, but it's Democrats who usually do it because they control all the institutions, right? So if you control the media and academia, all the cultural institutions, it's much easier to get away with stuff like that because you can just shout to everyone, these elections were valid. Don't listen to these crazy people. We control the TV stations and the radio stations and the internet and the colleges and the schools. Listen to us. Cultural hegemony, Gramsci was right about.
Yeah.
If you have cultural hegemony, you can run the joint totally.
Okay.
You can even cheat in elections. Yeah.
If everybody starts listening to Unreported and our message gets out there and people are cynical about elections, will that create more social unrest? Is this dangerous to completely have our approach where we don't really care for elections?
Social unrest in America these days looks like nasty memes on Twitter. That's what it is. Social protest now is being a shit poster on social media, right? I mean, there's all sorts of dissidents in America now. I mean, millions of us, right? What do we do though? Are we marching in the streets? No. Are we running for office? No, I'm not saying we should, but we're not doing, are we trying to get laws passed? No. We're talking on Twitter and among ourselves, and that's it. There's no movement being built. There's no organizations. There's no dissident organizations. Back in the day, meaning before the internet, if you were mad about politics, you would start some organization, right? And then hopefully the organization would start a movement, which would be start as a cultural movement, then an institutional movement, and then you could actually gain material, real political power. But all of us dissidents out here, millions of us, there's probably more dissidents now in America than ever before. In fact, I'm sure that's right. I'm sure there are more people who are hostile to the establishment than ever before in American history. And yet we don't do a damn thing except talk about it among each other and have podcasts. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yes, if people listen to us and this word gets out, which it is, by the way, I'm not even saying I'm not sure what people should do.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying maybe this goes to the James Burnham, Curtis Yarvin thesis, which is that change is not going to come through the normal means. That it's going to be, if there's going to be real change, it's going to be over generations. It's going to be very gradual. It's going to be cultural. It's going to be a very long, gradual cultural shift. But running for office, forming organizations, running candidates, having protests in the streets don't work. Nothing happens. Mm-hmm. That seems to be usually correct, by the way.
Okay. Trump announced that he's running again. And to Yarvin's point, it seems like the Democrats are really happy because they know there's going to be a fundraising boost from this. And
oh, yeah.
I think they think 2024 is going to be pretty easy because Trump's running again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was quite a speech, too. I mean, a lot of people said it was lackluster and was evidence that Trump is not on top of his game. But I saw some interesting stuff in there. First of all, there was I don't know if you're going to play this, but there was that horrific line about the death penalty for drug dealers.
Yeah, I've got it if you want to hear it.
Which, well, he said the same thing a few months ago. And in fact, I think we talked about it. Yeah, I mean, it's just barbaric and it's all the bad things. I mean, but what's interesting about that to me is the contradiction, because Trump is the first president in American history to release drug dealers from prison.
Yeah.
First Step Act. That's what he did. I mean, it's one of the best things he did. So what's up, Don? Like, why are you hating on drug dealers now? You used to love them. And then the other thing is, how many Trump supporters and voters use illegal drugs? I would imagine a huge number do. So are they really into this idea of killing drug dealers? I sort of doubt it. I mean, where are Trump voters located? They're located in meth alleys. They're located in the meth and fentanyl centers of the country. We know this. I mean, that's what red areas of the country are. That's where all the meth is.
Okay. So Hotep Jesus talks about the Black community as a voting bloc and saying, hey, when people talk about Black support for Democrats, it's really auntie and grandma who show out and vote. It's not the whole Black community. It's the one or two members of the family who actually votes.
And it's older women entirely. Yeah.
I think there's a similar phenomenon everywhere to some extent, in that like the kid who's strung out on drugs isn't going to vote necessarily, or the young people who are affected by this may not end up voting. The meth affected and the fentanyl affected may not end up voting, but like their concerned parents who see lives get destroyed by these drugs are going to say, I wish somebody would come in and kill these drug dealers and stop this from hurting our communities.
Yeah, no, that could certainly be going on. It could be sort of an intergenerational split, just like among Black people in the 1960s and 70s, right? When you had drugs taken off in the ghetto, and then you had Black political leaders and religious leaders, pastors and the like, calling for more cops in the hood, longer sentences for drug dealers, and all the rest of it, right? And people forget that actually started with Black political leaders calling for that stuff. Joe Biden became the champion of 3 strikes and mandatory minimums many years later, it was black political leaders who started that call, but it was against their own people, like you're saying, usually younger people who were doing drugs and dealing drugs. And what happened was, you know, the black political class locked up their own constituents in big numbers. So that could be going on here. It could be, you're right, it could be older Trump voters seeing their kids getting addicted to fentanyl and meth and wanting an end to it. And I totally understand it. I'm sympathetic as hell to that. And it's just, I think it's a bad move to incarcerate everybody or kill everybody in response to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird. Trump on drugs is that, like, he's a teetotaler. He, like, hasn't had a single drop of alcohol in his entire life, is what he says.
Huh.
But he has to be on some cocktail of pharmaceutical drugs himself. Like,
I'm pretty sure he's on Adderall.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure. I mean, there was that one clip where you could see like a white chunk fly out of his nose a couple of years ago. I said, I recognize that because I used to crush up Adderall and snort it too. If you're serious about Adderall, that's what you do. It also, you get high real fast from it if you do it, if you snort it. So I recommend it to everyone, and I'm sure that Don is doing it.
Yeah, and then Brooklyn Kid 821 in the chat says, out of the 5 battleground states that Trump lost, 3 of them are all in mail-in voting and ballot harvesting. This election is over before it started. I think that's the big deal too, in that forget stealing the election or any charges about things being fair versus unfair. Just the rules of the election favor Democrats now ever since COVID.
Yeah. I just saw a statistic, 80%. What is it? 80% of elections that have gone through the auditing process of any kind, right? Any kind of curing process, 80% of those elections have gone for Democrats. In other words, when the apparatus gets a hold of the process, right, it goes the Democrats' way. Again, this is because the Democrats control the institutions. And so if you have intermediaries of any kind between the voters and the people who count the votes, right? If you have ballot boxes supplied by Mark Zuckerberg, if you have mail-in ballots, right, which have to be handled on both ends by people, there's all these people, intermediaries between the voter and the people who count the votes. If the institutions of your society are controlled by one party, what is most likely to happen? That party is going to benefit because the people handling these things in between are more likely to be Democrats than Republicans. So you want it to be a very, very simple system. And you want it to be the old-fashioned, you go in person and you vote in person, you drop your ballot in the box and no one touches it or sees it again. That's it. All this mail-in stuff, the drop boxes, no. I mean, it's a recipe for corruption. And there's no reason for it whatsoever. We were doing just fine with regular in-person voting until the Democrats seized on this nonsense racist idea that black people can't vote if you limit the voting until before 6 or after 6 o'clock, right? So yeah.
Did you see the Senate voted to end the COVID-19 emergency declaration?
No.
Yeah. I saw some Democrat account saying that this is horrible. They just voted to end the COVID-19 emergency declaration. Vaccine costs are going up. Tests, treatments, all that stuff is going up. Student loan payments are going to have to restart. I think that's the big one, is why they did it, is to restart student loans. But yeah, the COVID-19 crisis is the justification for ballot harvesting.
Well, it was both. I mean, it was COVID, but I think it was more actually the whole voter suppression lie that really drove it, right?
Yeah, they wanted to do that first, and it wasn't enough. Like, they've been wanting, like, this plan has been out there forever. Democrats have wanted mail-in voting forever. But 2020, the COVID emergency put it over the line to where these state judiciaries and even governors in some instances could do it without really voting on it, where they could just implement these new rules.
Yeah. I forget who it was. It was one of my friends on Twitter, someone who's been on the show. I forget who it was, though. Pointed out that I think it's the last 3 national elections have seen record voter turnout for everybody, including African Americans. More black people have voted than ever before in the last 3 elections. And yet all we've heard about for the last 5-10 years is how Republicans are not letting black people vote. Total lie. It's all racist. But yeah, it's the combination. Then COVID, you're right. COVID is what really allowed them to push it through. But the groundwork was laid ideologically with years of this voter suppression myth being propagated.
Yeah. Well, just like everything with the government, the plan has existed for decades.
Right.
And whatever justification of the day that they can use to ram it through, they'll use.
Just like the lockdowns themselves.
Yeah.
Which, according to Jeffrey Tucker, who was on Unregistered a while ago talking about this, right? The plans for COVID, for the lockdowns, were hatched in 2004 under the Bush administration. And the people who hatched those plans, who had these plans for a global lockdown in the face of a pandemic, just waited inside the federal government for years and years and years. And one pandemic came after another and never really took off enough for them. Finally, they got COVID 2 decades later and said, now is our chance. And they got it, and they pushed lockdowns through. So yeah, things like that are often long in the making within the government.
And then now that the Republican majority has been solidified, they've already announced an investigation into the Bidens. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Who was that guy who announced it? Which Republican congressperson?
Comer. James Comer. I can put a clip.
Comer, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the Republicans always put somebody with a Southern accent up front. Do you ever notice that? It's just, do you guys want to win or not? And again, I love Southern accents. I'm just saying that most of the country is prejudiced against people with Southern accents. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw this guy. I was like, I knew immediately what MSNBC was going to do with this, right? Oh, it's another one of them rednecks trying to cause trouble. Don't listen to him. See, listen, you can hear from his voice that he's not uneducated. No need to listen to him. I mean, seriously, that's going to be Joy Reid. That's going to be all of them. Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow. They're going to be saying all that stuff.
Because they're racist.
Exactly. Exactly. Southerners are the smartest people, goddammit. Southerners are the smartest people and the best writers America's ever had. Faulkner, anybody?
Faulkner, yeah.
Flannery O'Connor, anybody? Yep. Tennessee Williams. Yep.
I like that senator from Louisiana, Kennedy. I forget his first name, but
his name's John Kennedy.
Yeah, John Kennedy, right? He sounds like Foghorn Leghorn.
Totally.
Yeah,
he's fun. Yeah, he's fun. I wish his politics were a little better.
Same.
He has his moments. He certainly has his moments. He's going to be fun in these investigation hearings that begin in January, which, God damn it, I can't wait, because they definitely got the House. Oh, did you see this? So MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has brokered a deal. Man, she's a wheeler dealer. This was slick. So, the MAGA hates Kevin McCarthy, right? They wanted to depose Kevin McCarthy. Not anymore. MTG went to McCarthy and said, listen, we will support you to be the House leader, right? Speaker of the House, if you appoint me and my friends to those committees, to those oversight committees, and give us full subpoena power. And apparently, so McCarthy just won the vote. He got MAGA to vote for him. And now, apparently, they're going to get subpoena power. So we are on. It is on. Oh, I cannot wait. Yeah, and they're already going for it. They're already going. As I said, they're going after the FBI today. They announced the investigation of Biden. That's some big shit, man. Going after Biden. Human trafficking was one of the charges. I want to see that. I can't imagine that's real.
Well,
it just means he hired prostitutes. That's all that means. It means that Hunter Biden hired prostitutes.
Yeah, which there's
a fucking break.
Damn good evidence of, though.
Oh no, he definitely did. But I'm saying to call that human trafficking is just disgusting. It has nothing to do with human trafficking.
Okay. Yeah. I think, human trafficking is this very, very charged word that I see on Twitter a lot nowadays.
Maggie McNeil. This is 2 words for this one. Maggie McNeil. This is what Maggie's been saying forever and ever and ever, that people have conflated human trafficking with sex work. And they are not the same. Human trafficking is a form of slavery. Sex work is consensual. It is, a consensual act between 2 adults. Human trafficking is when you kidnap somebody and force them to do things against their will. Different. Totally different. It's a way to discredit sex work is what it is.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Don't conflate those. I'm speaking to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, the area does get murky, though, when sex work is illegal, and these people are often being trafficked, though.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, it's if it's kidnapping and sex slavery, it is fine, but I need to see evidence of that. It almost never is, though. It's almost never people being forced to do things against their will. It's always just, oh, you're a prostitute? You've been human trafficked.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody else is making money off of this. You're a victim. Yeah,
happens all the time.
Yeah.
They now it's routine. A lot of police departments around the country routinely call every act of prostitution human trafficking, and then they lock up the pimp and the hooker on those charges of human trafficking, which is odd. If you're a victim of human trafficking, why should you go to prison?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you are your own pimp is how the state sees you as. I
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a bad thing. It's really bad. The conflation of human trafficking with sex work.
Damn.
And it needs to be called out in every instance. So when I heard him list human trafficking as one of the charges, I was just like, you lost me there, buddy. Go back to Oklahoma or wherever you're from. Just kidding.
Yeah, culturally, we need to do something. We need to culturally like start making movies where the bad guy has like an erudite NPR coastal accent as opposed to a southern accent. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, right. He sounds like NPR Morning Edition.
Yeah.
But he's actually a serial killer.
Yeah, and he's dumb.
But as he's killing people, he's very concerned about the rise of white supremacy and domestic terrorism. Yeah. The NPR people are super creepy.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, you could get there if you do like a fictionalized version of Kamala Harris, like just spouting slogans. Like that's very close to being a version of the Joker that you could make.
I see Kamala Harris as less of like the stealthy serial killer and more of like a spree shooter.
Yeah.
More of like just grabs an AR in a fit of rage and just goes and sprays a whole schoolyard or something like that.
While screaming, I love Venn diagrams.
The most spectacularly dismal vice president in American history. Does anybody like her?
Well, liberals who don't see her like in action like her. Liberals who know that she's a black woman who's the vice president like her, and they don't pay attention to the news beyond that like her.
Right. My old yoga teacher loves her. I know that. At the yoga studio down the street here, there's been for 2 years now, I think, there's been a big poster, Shepherd Ferry poster of Kamala Harris, and it says on it, "I'm speaking," which they think is badass. It's badass that she said to Mike Pence in the debate, "I'm speaking," when Mike Pence wasn't even interrupting her. I'm speaking, white man. She's the worst of them all. I'd like to have a word with Kamala Harris, and I will let her speak too.
Yeah.
Since we grew up together, I think she'll let me do that. I think she'll want to talk to me. We'll talk about our days in Berkeley as children, being bussed across town for racial engineering purposes. She loves it.
Yeah. But like in some areas of American popular entertainment, it's like okay to have like the villain be like have the old coastal accent that was like half British. Like that was a sign that you're devious and that you're upper class and that you're up to something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's when Hollywood was sort of populist, right? Back in the 50s and 60s. That elite, aristocratic, semi-British accent, which was used by people who went to the fancy colleges in America. You're right. That was seen as sort of like you're a little bit deceitful, not to be trusted if you have an accent like that. If you're from the upper classes, yeah, we need to bring that back. Populist cinema, popular culture. We do need that. There is none.
Yeah, there's none.
Zero. You're right. There's almost
none. Lectured down to by corporations. Oh my God. This is happening with like Netflix and everywhere. Like all the talented people quit in entertainment, which is why TV shows suck nowadays. Like She-Hulk was awful. Just everything on TV pretty much sucks nowadays.
Well, I mean, so until recently, all the movies sucked, but TV was good, and now even TV sucks.
Yeah, TV's starting to suck now. Yeah.
Right. So, but where are the talented people going? What are they doing?
A lot of them quit.
Making comic books,
maybe.
video games.
I don't know where they went. Maybe they're all driving Uber now. I don't know.
Maybe they're making porn, feminist porn.
Maybe, dude. Maybe. but
we need. You're right. No, we need popular culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good point. There is none.
Mm-hmm.
There's none except maybe like little elements of heavy metal, I think, are populist. Little elements of hip hop, certainly. But in TV and movies, there's nothing that's populist.
Yeah.
At all. It's all morality plays.
Yeah.
By the establishment telling us that we're racist.
Yeah. I can't. This happened so much during the Trump administration, but the villain would always be a redneck. The villain would always be somebody straight out Deliverance, just spewing whatever. Yeah.
It used to be an Arab. It was an Arab like in the 80s. The villain was always an Arab, and then it was in the 90s. I think it was. It was like a blonde Eastern European.
Yeah. Was
the villain, and now it's rednecks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just people like me.
Yeah.
White boys. Which I don't appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a villain.
Yeah.
I promise.
All right, you good to wrap up there?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So we are going to go to Unregistered Live and hang out on Zoom with all the patrons of Unregistered. If you would like to join us and hang out after every Unreported on Thursday nights, it starts in 2 minutes. Go to patreon.com/unregistered and join at any level, and we will see you very soon. Michael, phenomenal job once again. I love doing this with you, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thanks. Yeah, I look forward to this. And I like that we have a Ghostbusters reference as our sign off.
There you go. Awesome.
Cool.
Peace.
Peace.